Welcome to Learning with Friends. I'm Pat Fairless from Fairless Stamp and Flair, and today I am going to show you the technique called split negative. This has been around for a long time, and I have not done it for quite a while, but we're going to give it a try. It's easy as long as you know how to emboss, and I'll give you some tips on how to make it a little bit easier. You should have no problem. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, I am going to demonstrate a couple different ways to do this. The first way is probably what I've found to be the easiest way, but let me just talk a little bit about the type of stamp that works best. You want an image. You can use line images, solid images, any kind of image works okay. And I used both, and we'll show you examples of both. But you do want your stamp to be, I would say, at least medium to large in size. I'm going to use this Delicate Forest stamp set from the mini catalog, and I'm going to use this particular stamp right here. The tree, it's probably, I don't know how that would look. I did not try it, but you'd have a very thin image on each side, so it may not show up well. I certainly think this one is too small. So you kind of want a medium to a large image, and that's what I used today. So I'm going to demonstrate it with this one. And let's go ahead and take it out. Oh, these are the dies that come with this particular bundle. Aren't they pretty? I have not actually used them yet. I'm looking forward to that. I did not use them on today's card because I wanted the focus to be on the split image technique, not so much on the dies. So let me just set those out of my way. And one suggestion I have is a positioning tool does make this a little bit easier. It is not absolutely necessary, and I will show you how to do it both with a positioning tool if you have one, and if you don't have one, I'm going to show you how to do it without. So let's go ahead. I have cardstock here that measures, I forget, 3.5 by 2 3/4. That doesn't really matter. You can use whatever. And I'm just going to lay it on here. And if you use a positioning tool, because you're going to heat emboss this image twice on 2 different pieces of paper, so it is helpful to just mark the corners so you know where to lay your next image, or your next piece of cardstock, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead, and I do like, we have these magnets, of course, to hold it down, but I also like to use a little bit of more oomph and just use some temporary adhesive to just kind of hold it there. Along with the magnets, it does make it, when you use a photopolymer stamp set, these do want to stick a little bit. When you pull it up, they want to stick to the paper. So I'm going to position this where I want it. Get it equal side to side and equal top to bottom approximately. And I'm going to hold it down very well with my magnets as best I can. Because like I said, sometimes these photopolymers really want to stick to the paper. And when you go to pull it up, you can see the paper is trying to lift. Now I am going to use an embossing buddy on here because we're going to emboss this with white cardstock, and we're going to emboss it with black. And guess what? I forgot my black cardstock, so hold on, I will be right back. But let's go ahead and do the black on the white first. So when you do this technique, you're going to want a dark cardstock and a light cardstock. For this particular one, I'm using black and white. You can use other colors, and I've done a couple of those, so we'll show you that also. And then you also want a light and a dark embossing color. So in this case, I'm using black and white. So we're going to put black on white and white on black. But it is important to get this nicely dusted with your embossing buddy. And we're going to ink it up with Versamark. Now I've also found it kind of works well to your stamp set under this thing. And I know these are no longer available, but you may have it already, or you before it was discontinued, or you may have a different positioning system, which will work just fine too. So we're going to emboss this or stamp this with Versamark. And carefully lift this back up and remove it. I'm going to set this out of my way because we're going to come back to that. And I am going to heat emboss this with black embossing powder. And you probably know whenever you put black on white, you do tend to get a little dusting, and that's why the embossing buddy is important. This looks like I may not have gotten this well inked. So we will try this again. Set this aside. I guess that's why I cut two by mistake. 2 whites and no black. So let's try this again. This is my day to have issues. Didn't get everything cut. And I obviously did not get that well inked. Had I not removed it and known that first, and hard to do that when you're embossing though, isn't it? So let's get this nicely inked up. Put this back on here. And push a little bit harder. Really give it a good press this time. I was distracted by not having my black cardstock. Okay, I'm going to use that as an excuse. So let's try this again. I am going to bring the black embossing powder back in, and hopefully we get a good image this time. Ah, that looks better. Okay, still I'm not getting great coverage up there, so we'll add a little bit more, and that looks better. Get a little bit more down here. Okay, I'm happy with that. So I'm going to move the black out of the way, and we're going to heat emboss this first before I cut the black cardstock, just in case I rub it on something. Let's go ahead and just heat emboss this. Make sure I get all those little specks off from there as best I can. You probably won't get them all, but it'll be fine. All right. Sorry about the noise. I'm just going to quickly heat emboss this. Once the heat tool warms up, it'll go quickly. Want it to turn shiny and then you know it's cooked. As I've been saying many times, you never want to overheat. I've never had it burn. Some people are concerned about burning a cardstock cut on anybody so it's not quite that hot. But you just want to make sure it's all nice and shiny so that it doesn't rub off. So now let's go ahead and set that aside. And I am going to bring in black cardstock and my trimmer. And we need to cut a piece of cardstock here. So what did I say I needed? I needed 3.5 by 2 3/4, I think it was. So let's do the 2 3/4 here. And the 3.5. It should be the same size as the other one. If it's not, then I did something wrong. So get that out of my way. And let's just double check. Since my luck isn't really with me today. Well, it's close, but I am going to just take this back, because this is key. You want to make sure these pieces are the same size, because when you cut them in half, I don't know if this moved on me, or maybe the white one was a bit off. That could be too. All right, there's a little smidge that came off. That should work. All right, so we still need this one. We'll just set this one aside. We're going to bring our Stamparatus back in here. And I am going to lay this in the same place. And again, I'm going to use just a little bit of a temporary adhesive. I wouldn't do that if I had a cling stamp set, but because I have a photopolymer, it does really like to grab it. And you just kind of want to make sure it's in a good place and that it stays there, right? So let's get our embossing buddy on here to get rid of any static we might have from the Michigan dry weather. And let's go ahead and ink this up once more. What did I do with my stamp set? Don't know. So let's just ink this up well. Sometimes I put stuff away and get them out of my way because I have kind of a small workspace here by the camera. So let's push this again. Take my time a little bit more and really give it some good oomph on here to make sure I've got a good thing of Versamark. I could always put it on I could stamp it again, but since I kind of have to remove it to get the embossing powder on, it doesn't help me. So now we're going to use, and you can really see I did a good job with the embossing buddy. Looks like we got lots of dust. So I think embossing buddies have baby powder in them. I think that's what that is. But that'll brush off. Okay, that one is much better than the first black one we did. So let's go ahead and heat emboss this one. Why that stuff I'm moving, laying off. I'm disorganized today. I didn't think I was when I started. Some days are like that, right? But it's okay. You'll get the idea, I think. We all have days where things go better than others. Just make sure it's nice and shiny everywhere. All right. So now we basically have the two pieces for our split negative. And we're going to cut each of these in half. And it's important to cut them in half exactly. So I said that this was 3.5. So if I divide 3.5 by 2, I get 1 3/4. So I'm going to lay this here and cut this at 1 3/4. Now the nice thing about this technique is you do end up with two pieces, so you can make two different cards, all right? So let's just set those over here and bring this back and line the white one up at 1 3/4. And if I paid attention to where it cut, it was somewhere between these two little flowers right up in here. And that's pretty much where it looks like it's lining up with. So that's at 1 3/4. Okay. So now we have our two split negatives, and we are just going to flip them. All right, so this will make our image. Isn't that cool? Now, a hint that I'm going to show you, and I'm just going to do one of these for you. Let's just take this top one. What I found is that if I put this on a piece of backing that is just a smidgen smaller than the 3.5 by 2 3/4, so I just took a 1/16 off. You could make them exactly the same size. I just didn't want the edges potentially hanging out. Doesn't really matter on the white one, but if the black one, you'd have a little white showing. So this is my hint for making this easier, is to just take a piece, and you can use any scrap cardstock. I just picked white. I could certainly use black. You could use anything. You're not going to see this. So I am just going to lay this on here. This just makes the rest of the card a little easier to assemble because you've got it attached to something and you're not messing with continually trying to get two different pieces aligned. So that is just my hint. It certainly is optional, and you wouldn't have to do this if you can manage it well without that. That's perfectly fine. It just worked better for me. So let's give this a push. And I would do the same thing with the other one, which would be used for a different card. So I took my first card I'm going to show you is all black and white. And I kind of took the split negative part of it to the extreme. And so I also split my mats behind it to carry on with the split negative. And so I'm just going to do that as well. And I'm going to put the white one on a black mat. And I want to make sure that the center here lines up with my split. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side with the white. And then I'll show you the card. You're probably thinking, when's she going to get to the card? I want to see the card, right? So now I should just butt this black backing up against here, make sure it's centered, make sure these are aligned. And there is my split negative focal point. And let me show you the card that I made with that. Like I said, it is a black and white card, totally black and white. This is actually a bookbinding fun fold. So there's a score line down here on a standard size card. And so it opens like this, and I just added some black and white gingham ribbon. You can see then that I took the backing here one step further, and I also put the black on white and the white on black. And then I did the same thing with the sentiment. So you just, in the case of the sentiment, you just stamp it once on a basic white scrap, once on a basic black. Do just like we did here. Emboss with the opposite. So on black, emboss with white. On the white, emboss with black. Cut it in half between the good things. And I used a little strip for the backing to just kind of hold it together. Again, you wouldn't have to do that. It just made it easier for me to align things and keep things aligned. So that is my first card. Now, I said we had leftover cards, right? I can make another card. So I decided the other one maybe should have a little bit of color. So here's what I used this time. Again, I did use the same split backing. You would not have to do that. I could have made that pool party, but then I laid it on a pool party mat. And this cardstock or this designer series paper is from the Softly Stippled designer series paper. That is one of the choices from Celebration. With a $50 order, you can get this for free. It's beautiful paper. So that is my second card. made with that particular technique. Here for the front of the card, I just embossed, or the envelope, I just embossed this. The inside, I did use this tiny little image from the stamp set, and I think you would probably agree that it's too small if half of it was white and half of it was black. First of all, it's probably not big enough for a focal point. Works great in a little corner card, but that's what I meant by you kind of want your image to be either medium. I would consider this one medium size or large. So those are my two cards made with that black and white. Now, I also told you that if you don't have a positioning tool, there is a way to do this technique. So I am just going to demonstrate this. I'm not actually going to make this for you, but what you need to do, and this is the stamp set I used to do this, and I will show you the card I made with it. I used this image here from In the Moment. I thought she was, I don't know, I like this image. And she wasn't too busy. I love the one with the dog, but I thought if I split it, there might be too much going on that it would be difficult to figure out where all the lines were and what the things really were. I wasn't sure, so I stuck with this one. And the way you want to do this is you're going to put this on a block that most closely matches the size of your image. And again, I would call this a medium-sized image. But now the trick here to get it aligned is to take the size of your block. And so I measured my block, and my block is there's 2 7/8, and I don't know if you can see that, but you can believe me, it is 2 7/8 by 2 5/8. That's the size of this particular block. So that is the size I cut my cardstock, and I cut it exactly to the 2 7/8 by 2 5/8. Now when you go to stamp here, you're going to just position your stamp exactly in the center of your cardstock. And on your second piece, you will do the same thing, and it comes out wonderfully. So you don't need to have a positioning tool, but my suggestion is whatever size block you're using, cut your cardstock exactly that same size. If you don't want it to be that large, you can cut it down afterwards. Just make sure you cut down both pieces exactly the same, okay? It's easiest if you don't have to cut it down and just start with a piece the size of your cardstock or the size of your block. So for that one, I said I used the In the Moment stamp, and I actually tried a couple colors here. I used Daffodil Delight and Starry Sky. I was thinking sunrise, sunset. I don't know which is which. Is she looking towards the sunset, or is she looking, and this one she's looking towards the sunrise, I think. And here she's looking towards the sunset. But I wanted to play around with colors to see how it worked. So I embossed her on both the Daffodil Delight and the Starry Sky. On Starry Sky, I embossed her with white, and on the Daffodil Delight, I embossed her with basic black. And then I did exactly what I just showed you. I just cut them in half, split them up, and I only did make one card. But I have the extra piece. I can make another card at some time in the future. So that is that idea with colors. I kept the inside very simple. I didn't carry the split negative into the card quite as much as with the black one. I did for the first layer. I did split it again. So I have Daffodil Delight behind the Starry Sky, and Starry Sky behind the Daffodil Delight. So that is card number 3. I should say technique number 2 of the way to do it for positioning. And then my last card, I used my positioning tool again, but again, I could have used a larger block. This is made with the Enduring Beauty stamp set from the Spring Mini, and it also comes with coordinating dies. I did not use them, but I used the Sentiment and this particular stamp. And in this case, I stamped it twice, once on Very Vanilla and once on Pretty Peacock. On Pretty Peacock, I embossed it with silver embossing powder, and on Very Vanilla, I embossed it with gold embossing powder. And then in this case, I just cut it at a diagonal instead of cutting it in half. You can cut them vertically, horizontally, vertically. I decided to do this one just at a diagonal. This is, I would consider, a large stamp, so it takes up most of the card. But I liked how that turned out. I thought that turned out kind of pretty. My sentiments, I just embossed. Oh, my thing did this to me last time. Well, I'm glad I can see when it happens. I have gremlins in my internet, I swear. I'm not even close to my computer, and that's where everything's run from, so I have no idea why that happens, but 2 weeks in a row now it's done that to me. Anyway, so that's this particular card here. I just mounted it on some Designer Series paper. That Designer Series paper is from Earth and Elegance, from the current annual catalog, and I just used the same designer paper on the flap, added a bit of strip of it in the center here. I figured, holding you close in my heart, I didn't know what kind of a sentiment to put in there because I don't know what that would be used for, so I can always add that sentiment later. And then the other card, made with the other half, in this case, I mounted it in landscape rather than portrait, but you can see it is just the opposite image, right? And I mounted it on gold foil. Now, when you want to use a mat for gold foil, my hint here is take the biggest die you have that will leave you a large enough border, cut something out of the center because you're going to cover it up, save that piece and use it on another card. On this case, I used a little bit of Simply Elegant trim. I took one strand from silver, one from gold, keeping in with silver and gold, and I added a gold strip here. And on this envelope, since there was no designer paper, I just stamped this image again and embossed. So those are the cards I wanted to share with you today for the split negative technique. We'll stick this kind of over. Well, we'll just take that out. You get the idea, right? And then the other two with the black. And I'm probably never going to get these all in the screen, so there we go. Those ended up with 5 because I didn't do 2 out of this. But the nice thing about this technique is you do always end up with 2 particular, they're opposite, but you can make 2 different cards. So let me flip my camera back. All right, it's back to me. I hope it doesn't jump around anymore. I don't know why it does that. It drives me nuts. Wish I could figure out why it does it, but I have no idea. So anyway, that is the split negative technique. I hope you learned something. If you have questions or something doesn't quite make sense about what I said, please leave a comment and I will do my best to answer any questions that you leave. I am so thankful that you watched today. Thank you for that. And if you would share the video with your friends, that would be great. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. And I will see you next week with something else. Have a great week and God bless.